Reading the comment section on last night's video, all I'm seeing is, Mason, are we panicking on Chase? Mason, are we panicking on Garrett Wilson? Mason, what is going on here? So we want to go through, we want to look at some players that you should be panicking on. And I do want to be a little realistic and say, okay, guys, the world's not ending. I mean, the sky's not falling. Some of these guys will be fine. I can't tell you that, though, when it comes to Alexander Madison. Alexander Madison is a running back that I said to start this past week. Not going to lie to you, I wish I didn't, because this is a running back that face planted in front of the entire world on Thursday night against the Philadelphia Eagles. He goes out there, he has 8 carries, 28 rushing yards, 3 receptions for 11 receiving yards. Now, the reason why I thought Alexander Madison was intriguing is because he is getting pretty much every single touch in this backfield. He is getting pretty much every single snap out of this backfield as well. That's what we saw week 1 against Tampa. That's what we got to see in week 2 against Philadelphia. And honestly, it doesn't look like this is going to be changing anytime soon. But my fundamental issue here is the inefficiency of Alexander Madison. Not only that you turn on the TV and he looks slow out there, and obviously that can be a little bit scary, but more so diving into the numbers to see this being a running back with 14 opportunities this past week, where he walks away with 39 total yards. Whereas in week 1, he has 15 total opportunities and walks away with 44 total yards. This has been one of the least efficient running backs in the entire NFL in an extremely happy passing environment. You have to understand that when you're looking at these offenses that are looking to go out there and air the ball out 40 plus times a game like the Minnesota Vikings are, naturally, when you go to hand the ball off, if you have a draw, for instance, and all of a sudden, the box is going to be lighter because you've just thrown the ball for 6 times in a row, naturally, that's a good environment to run in. What we should expect in that environment is maybe volume's a little bit down, but efficiency is through the roof, and maybe it counteracts. Well, that's not the case. With Alexander Madison, the efficiency is way lower than you would expect while the volume is low. So I don't really see how this gets better for Alexander Madison anytime soon. Maybe if week 3, he shows us something, we can change our mind and look to go ahead and start him in week 4. But yeah, until further notice, Alexander Madison is not startable. And if you're going to try to go out there and sell him, I got bad news for you. Nobody's buying. Now, let's just get this out of the way. Let's go and look at Cincinnati, because I understand, yes, the Bengals are 0-2, and I understand that Chase has not been good. Now, y'all know week 1, we labeled T. Higgins as well as Joe Mixon as buy low candidates. The reason being is I believe that at the end of the day, this Cincinnati Bengals offense will be an above average to a very good offense in the NFL this next season. I think we have a large enough sample size of play from Joe Burrow in 2021 and 2022 that gives us that indication that Burrow in this overall extremely young offense should be able to effectively move the ball down the field and provide a lot of overall fantasy points this next season. Well, Higgins came out and crushed. Joe Mixon looked very good in week 2 as well. So the primary concern that people now have with Cincinnati is actually going to be Jamar Chase. And I just want to put things into perspective. This isn't the first time we've seen this. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bengals started off 0-2 last year. If you look at the beginning of the season last year, we had a 2-week stretch that looked very similar to what Jamar Chase has done over the past 2 weeks. Over the past 2 weeks, Jamar Chase has had 17 targets. He's had 10 receptions. He's had 70 receiving yards. It's not like he's giving you absolutely nothing. He's still getting volume. He's still averaging 8.5 targets a game. Whereas if you go ahead and you look at what we got, say, in weeks 2 and 3 last year for Jamar Chase, there are 19 targets, 11 receptions, 83 receiving yards, about the same. You look at weeks 3 and 4, about the same volume. He had 16 targets, 10 receptions, 110 receiving yards. So this isn't the first time that we've seen this. And y'all just have to understand, when we are playing fantasy football, it's a numbers game, and there's going to be natural volatility as we go through the season. It's kind of like if you're playing poker, and maybe every once in a while you'll get dealt pocket aces twice in a row, but then you're probably going to be followed up with some deuce sevens every once in a while. Same thing here. It's just natural volatility and randomness in fantasy football. The only thing that I would be concerned of if we are looking at the Cincinnati Bengals offense will be the calf strain of Joe Burrow. There's a report saying that he re-aggravated it this week. I don't know how much we buy that. I mean, right now, if you're looking at Las Vegas sportsbooks, they had the Bengals as 6.5-point favorites this next week against the Los Angeles Rams. So if they have them at 6.5-point favorites, I'm going to listen to Las Vegas, as I think everybody should. I think we should assume that this Bengals team is still good, and they will be able to effectively move the ball down the field. Jamar Chase will still be my wide receiver 3 in fantasy currently. Now, going over to the Jets, I want to be very brief. I've already talked about Breece Hall over and over again. I mean, y'all are tired of hearing me say, sell Breece Hall, sell Breece Hall, sell Breece Hall, sell Breece Hall. Now, what I want to be looking at now will be the actual snaps and the actual usage that you had from Breece Hall in this offense. Because I can come out here and I can say, oh, okay, he's a committee running back in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. This is someone that inherently we shouldn't be that excited about. But if you look at the actual numbers, it really lays things out clearly. Breece Hall this past week played 15 snaps in comparison to Dalvin Cook at 17. So this is now back-to-back weeks where Breece Hall has seen fewer snaps than Dalvin Cook. And what's very interesting is now you get Michael Carter added in for 13 snaps. They split this backfield 3 ways. This is an offense that is disgusting. If we remove the one reception from Garrett Wilson, where he had 68 receiving yards, you're going to see that Zach Wilson went out there and barely cracked 102 passing yards this week. Breece Hall will see better matchups going forward. This team was very frustrated based off what they're putting out there on Twitter. I mean, Breece Hall's letting his frustrations be known. I think that Breece Hall is one of the most talented running backs in the NFL, but I want to reiterate, sell Breece Hall if you still can. If someone's still going to remember the talent that he has, plus the breakaway runs on Monday night, cash out when we can. Garrett Wilson, similar to Breece Hall week 1, where you have that long reception. In the case of Hall, it was a long carry. Maybe you're able to go through and maybe you're able to sell him right now. I mean, he goes out there, he has 8 targets, he has 83 receiving yards and the receiving touchdown, but it was off of one long 68 receiving yard touchdown. So I think if you can pivot off of Garrett Wilson, if we can still go through and package him in a deal with the smaller piece and go get someone like Chris Olave, that's going to be something I'm very, very interested in. And maybe the sell-high window just opened based off this game. Now, going over to Kyle Pitts, super brief. Pitts was someone I like coming into the season, and I'm taking a fat L here, ladies and gentlemen. With Pitts week 1, I was sitting here going, okay, yeah, Pitts and Drake London, this is very concerning, but let's at least see what this looks like when there's passing volume in this offense. There's passing volume. There were 32 passing attempts, and Kyle Pitts went out there and had 3.5 points. So at this point, in a full PPR format, it pains me to admit, but if you were asking me, Mason, should I go through, should I start Kyle Pitts or Zach Ertz? I may end up having to say Zach Ertz because you don't really have any win situation here for Kyle Pitts. I mean, if this team's out to a heavy lead, they're just going to run the ball 50 times in a game. If this team's trailing, Kyle Pitts still isn't producing. So Kyle Pitts can't start him until we see otherwise. Now, before we go over to our other guy, I do want to remind y'all, please, if you have not done so already, go check out these pick'ems that you have on Underdog Fantasy. If you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Plus, you will get our 2023 fantasy football rest of season rankings and tiers. And also, if you sign up before the Monday night game tonight, you're going to be getting a Kenny Pickett special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard against the Cleveland Browns. You're only going to get all of that with promo code FLOCK. Now, our next running back, Jamir Gibbs. I see some people concerned that, yeah, Craig Reynolds going out there and he's taking the work that David Montgomery left behind. Long-term, the Montgomery injury is a good thing for Jamir Gibbs. This is just going to speed up the Jamir Gibbs takeover. Gibbs did play more snaps than any other running back in this backfield this week. He played 32 out of 66 potential snaps. Now, keep in mind, primarily due to the David Montgomery injury. And with Jamir Gibbs, didn't really have a lot of carry volume. Jamir Gibbs went out there and he had a total of 7 carries. Didn't really get anything going with them. But where we want Jamir Gibbs is, remember, in that full PPR format. You really don't have any interest in Jamir Gibbs in a non-PPR league in particular because, yes, Gibbs probably not going to be getting a ton of goal line work. But in your full PPR league, Jamir Gibbs had 9 targets in this offense. Jamir Gibbs is still an extremely talented running back. This was his second NFL game ever. Do not be panicking on Jamir Gibbs. For the love of God, Gibbs going to be fine. Gibbs going to be great. Now, going over to our next RB, Damien Pierce is someone I'm very much worried about. Damien Pierce is splitting this backfield 3 ways. So week 1, you actually had Mike Boone being the third running back outside of Damien Pierce and Singletary. Then you had Dare being the third running back this week. And if you look at the total snaps that have been taken through the first 2 weeks for these Houston guys, Damien Pierce taking a total of 74, which is accounted for 46% of this backfield. So yeah, I mean, in this 3-man split, he does get the largest slice of that pie. But if it's cut into 3 ways and it's the Houston Texans offense, Damien Pierce does not really look startable. So I said this in the lessons learned video, but I want to reiterate it. If I put Damien Pierce inside like our top 18 running backs this week, please clown on me in the comment section. Drop as many clown emojis as you have. Make fun of me. There's no way we can do that. I mean, even if Singletary were to go down until we see otherwise, it's going to be tough to be excited about any type of volume in Houston. Now, going over to Josh Jacobs, I don't really know what to say here because Jacobs still is getting the volume, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, if you're going to look at this, Jacobs did pretty much run the majority of routes. He got all the carries. He got a ton of targets this week. I mean, the overall issue that you have with Jacobs is not really a Josh Jacobs issue. It's more so a Las Vegas Raiders issue, where if you're going to be looking at what you've had with the Raiders, at least through the first 2 weeks, the first week was all right. I mean, even if you did go out there and barely win, you still scored 17 points. And in that environment, Jacobs was able to see 19 carries. Jacobs also saw 3 targets out of this backfield. Now, what begins to get really concerning is when you get the doors blown off you by the Buffalo Bills in week 2. This was expectation, of course, but Josh Jacobs went for negative rushing yards. Let me pull this up just to confirm because that doesn't even sound right. Yeah, give me 1 second. Yeah, Josh Jacobs had 9 carries for negative 2 yards. Laughably bad, and it may get worse. Because if Davante Adams is not in this offense, while Jacobs may see all the volume, and while Jacobs may be the last weapon they have left, if Adams is not here, this team will not be able to move the ball down the field. Now, of course, we don't know just yet. We are in a spot where maybe we do have Davante Adams back in week 3. Maybe we get a bounce back from Las Vegas. We'll see. Jacobs is still getting the volume. It's not like a Damien Pierce situation, so I'm not too worried. Now, going over to Justin Fields, y'all know I've been a long-time hater on Fields. I've gotten so many threats. I mean, I've gotten crazy comments with me talking down on Justin Fields and his ability as an NFL quarterback. But I've remained with one thing. While Justin Fields may be a bad real-life NFL quarterback, Justin Fields is good in fantasy based off his rushing upside. The Chicago Bears had the worst passing offense in 2022 than the NFL has seen over the past decade. It's what we talked about all offseason. And I know people hated to hear it, but here we are in week 3. Now, Justin Fields is not really changing his ways. The first 2 weeks doesn't look great as a passer. I mean, he goes out there, he has, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions so far. And as a rusher, things have come back down to earth just a bit. He only has 62 total rushing yards. He has 1 rushing touchdown. But I want to remind everybody, very similar to what we did with Jamar Chase, because as someone who's been a Justin Fields hater, I feel like maybe the hate is going a little bit too far at this point. Because you go back to 2021, how did he start off? 191 total passing yards through the first 2 weeks. 48 total rushing yards through the first 2 weeks. And where were we at the end of the season? The Chicago Bears with the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. The Chicago Bears with the worst passing offense through the past decade, but 160 carries, 1,100 rushing yards, and 8 rushing touchdowns. And Justin Fields as an elite level quarterback in a 4-point passing touchdown league based off this rushing upside. So please, if this presents a buy low moment on Justin Fields, specifically in a 4-point passing touchdown format, where you could go through and you could trade Kirk Cousins for him, I'm going to do that. And of course, Cousins may be a much better real life NFL quarterback, but the thing is, fundamentally, scoring at the quarterback position in fantasy is broken. And when you have this kind of rushing upside, you are going to be extremely viable in fantasy. But I think that's all I have for you. And of course, thank you so much for checking out the video. If you have not done so already, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. And if you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy, you're going to be getting a 100% deposit match up to $200. You're going to be getting our rest of season top 150 rest rankings and tiers. And also, you'll be getting a Kenny Pickett special pick'em for the game tonight, more than less than half a total passing yard. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Really appreciate you and really hope I get to see you in the live stream later tonight.